Before we get into today's game, I want to talk about the sponsors for my channel. Card Conduit is the best way to sell your unused Magic cards. Whether you've got a box of unsorted bulk, or a complete and alphabetized set, there's a great option for everyone. With a payout averaging 19% better than using any one buy list, and that's after fees are applied, you can rest assured you'll get the best bang for your buck. If you're a skeptic like me, their easy customer service and detailed reports make the whole interaction transparent and safe. And if you use the affiliate link in the description below, or the promo code MTGMUDSTA, you'll save 10% off their fees. And 401 Games, Canada's one-stop shop for trading cards, board games, and hobby supplies. Not to mention an easy-to-use and great online buy list. And if you use the promo code MTGMUDSTA, your first purchase of MTG Sealed and Singles will be 5% off. And Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest deck. So be sure to use the code MUDSTA or the affiliate link down below to save 5% on your next order.
Hey, before we get into anything, you gotta make sure you come back this Friday, because we're gonna be streaming the Bloomborough Precon decks here, and if I can figure it out, probably at Twitch at the same time. We're gonna be playing at least a game with the Face Commanders and the Alt Commanders, and this is gonna start off around between 6 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to look for the link either in Twitter, or you'll see a pop-up on the notifications on my YouTube channel. I'll see you all then.
Today's patron shoutout goes to Wes Allen. Thanks, Wes, for supporting me through Patreon. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game has Max, Mika, and I'm thrilled to announce Kevin has rejoined us once more. Max is testing out my Omo deck, keeping 2 forests, nesting grounds, nature's lore, Magus of Candelabra, copy land, and an arcane signet. Kevin is playing his tried and true Sophina and Wernog deck, keeping mountain, thriving heath, Goldmire Bridge, dam, search for glory, D-Spark, and Drana, Liberator Malakir. Mika is playing Faldorn, keeping Forest, Mountain, Cinderglade, Explore, Aurora Phoenix, Secure Tribe Elder, and a Wooded Foothills. Lastly, I am playing my Necrobloom deck, keeping Courser of Kruphix, Yawgmoth Thran Physician, Fetid Heath, Reprieve, Forest, Entis Restoration, and a Woodland Cemetery. Max wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws, plays a forest, and casts the Magus of the Candelabra. Kevin draws and plays a tapped Rustvale Bridge. I've just got a forest return, and I pass. Mika's turn has him playing a Wooded Foothills, and he cracks it, losing 1 to find a land, and passes while searching. Max draws and plays a Nesting Grounds. He then casts Arcane Signet, and hits Mika for 1 before passing to Kevin. Kevin plays a tapped Goldmire Bridge, and passes to me. I've got a Woodland Cemetery, which comes in untapped, and I pass. Mika's turn 2 has him drawing, playing a mountain, and casting everyone's favorite Steve. Max draws and casts a Nature's Lore, going to find a forest. He then plays a blue and a green for Growth Spiral, drawing off of it, and putting a Manor Gate into play. He names the opposite color, and then goes to combat. Max swings the Magus at Mika, who blocks the Secure Tribe Elder. Before damage, he sacrifices him, going to find a basic, and with nothing else, Max passes. Kevin's got a mountain for turn, and he then casts Wernog. We all decide to take 1 instead of giving him more clues, and he makes 1. He then plays a Soul Ring and passes to me. My turn has me playing a Fetid Heath, and I then cast Scoot Swarm and pass. Mika draws and plays a Cinder Glade. He then casts Explore, drawing a card and playing a mountain as his second land for turn. He then has enough mana at this point to cast Faldorn, and he passes to Max. Max's main phase has Omo coming in, and he puts an everything counter onto the Magus and the Forest. Going to combat, Max pokes me for 1 with the Magus. He then passes, and during his end step, Kevin sacrifices a clue to draw a card. Kevin draws, and plays another tapped land with a Nomad Outpost. He's got enough mana though to overload Dam. With Wernog dying, he gets another trigger, and once more, all of his opponents choose to take the damage instead of clues, with Kevin only gaining 1. I draw and cast a Courser of Kruphix. I reveal my top card, but it's not a land, which is surprising considering this is a land-based deck, and I then pass to Mika. Mika draws and plays Aurora Phoenix. This gets him a Cascade trigger, and he reveals until he hits Kadama's Reach. He finds a basic into play, and a basic to hand, and then passes to Max. Max has a Flooded Grove, and then recasts Omo, putting an everything counter onto it and another forest. He then passes to Kevin. Kevin's turn has him drawing and playing Drana. Once the vampire resolves, he casts Sophina and passes. I draw for turn and reveal an Undergrowth Stadium on top of my library, which I then play and gain 1 as it comes in. I've got enough mana at this point for Necrobloom, casting my commander and passing. Mika's got a forest for turn and casts 3 visits, going to find another forest. He then recasts Faldorn and passes. Max draws and plays a Planar Nexus. He then activates the Nesting Grounds to move the everything counter from Omo onto it, and then goes to combat. Max then swings Omo at me, and gets a trigger putting more everything counters onto stuff, and I then block with a Necrobloom. In his second main phase, Max then plays a Gatecreeper Vine, going to find a Basilisk Gate and putting it to hand. Kevin draws and plays a Thriving Heath, choosing red as it comes in. He then casts Search for Glory, and goes to find Audric Lunarch Marshal, and then casts him. Going to combat, Audric gives all of his creatures all of the keywords that he has, and Kevin swings Drana at Mika, and Sophina goes at me. Since they both have First Strike, they all deal damage first, and then Drana triggers, putting a +1/+1 counter onto them. After that, Kevin passes. I just draw and play a Phyrexian Tower. This makes me a plant token from the Necrobloom, and I pass to Mika. Mika's main phase has him asking for hand sizes, and he then casts a Jessica's Will, gaining 7 red mana and exiling his top 3. He then casts the Stomp half of a Bonecrusher Giant, and takes out my plant, and then casts the Bonecrusher Giant himself. This has him making another Wolf token, and Mika then wraps it up by casting a Battle Mammoth from exile as well, and he then goes to combat. Mika swings the Phoenix at Kevin, but forgets that Audric has given everything flying and First Strike, which makes them great blockers. The Phoenix dies, but after combat, Mika casts a Bloodbraid Elf. This gets him another Cascade, which returns the Phoenix to his hand. Mika reveals until he hits a Beast Within, and targets Audric, destroying the creature and giving Kevin a 3/3 beast. Max draws and casts an Avenger of Zendikar, making 6 plant tokens. Going to combat, he swings Omo at me again, and puts an everything counter onto the Avenger and a land, and I block with a Necrobloom so they bounce off each other. Max then plays a land for turn, which is a forest, and he gets to add a +1/+1 counter to all plants on the field, which include the Avenger of Zendikar, Omo, and the Magus, not to mention the tokens. Kevin draws and plays a Grimcline Pathway. He then casts a Getaway Car, and follows up with Wernog. Once more we all take the damage, so Kevin only makes 1 clue. He then uses Wernog to crew up the car, and Kevin goes to combat. He swings Drana at Mika, and the Getaway Car and Sophina at me. Before moving to blocks, I cast a Harrow, sacrificing a forest to find a forest and a plains, which gets me 2 plant tokens off the Necrobloom. I then cast Entish Restoration, which is basically another Harrow, and sacrifice a land, finding the basics that I need to meet the Necrobloom's ability, which in turn gets me 2 zombie tokens this time around, but I still choose to take the hit. The Getaway Car also bounces Wernog, and we get another trigger, with each of us also taking 1 again, and Kevin only makes 1 clue token. With nothing else, he passes. I draw and cast Open the Way, which is easily my favorite X spell in recent years. I put 4 into the X, revealing until I hit 4 lands. I gain 4 life, and make 4 zombie tokens, and then pass to Mika. Mika draws and plays a Game Trail, revealing a forest from hand so it comes in untapped. He goes to combat, and swings a Battle Mammoth at Kevin, who takes the 6. In his post-combat main phase, Mika casts Aurora Phoenix, and reveals until he hits Invasion of Kaldheim. He gives it to me to defend, and then exiles his hand and draws a new one. He then casts Venture forth from exile, revealing until he hits a blighted woodland. With nothing else, he passes to Max. Max draws and plays a Satyr Wayfinder. And from the cards he reveals, he keeps a Trench Post, which he plays. This triggers the Avenger of Zendikar, and he then moves to combat. He swings Omo at Kevin, who's now a 3/7 thanks to the Avenger of Zendikar pumping plants, which Omo is, and Kevin takes 3 commander damage. After that, Max passes, with Kevin cracking a Clue to draw a card. Kevin draws and plays a Felwar Stone. He then casts Agent of the Iron Throne and passes. I draw, casting Yawgmoth. And I then play Mazarek. I sacrifice a plant token to Yawgmoth, putting a -1/- counter onto Drana, and pump my team, and draw a card. I then do it 3 more times. Once that's done, I play a Temple of Malady, making another zombie token and getting to scry. I then swing my pump zombies at Mika, who chumps out with his wolves, and with nothing else, I pass. Mika ticks down his Venture forth from exile and draws. He plays a Forest from exile, making a wolf token, and then activates Faldorn, discarding a card and exiling his top card. It's Soul Ring, which he then casts and makes a wolf token. Mika then passes, and during his end step, Max activates Trench Post to mill Mika for however many locusts he has. Max draws and casts Drawn from Dreams, keeping his best 2 cards from his top 7. He then plays a Basilisk Gate, pumping up all of his plants that are on the board. And he casts Dryad of Ilsean Grove. This lets him play a Cloud Post as his second land, and pumps his team again. Going to combat, he swings Omo at Kevin, who chumps with the Beast token. Max then passes, and during his end step, Kevin sacrifices a Clue, drawing a card, and also deals 1 to each of his opponents thanks to the Agent of Iron Thrones trigger. Kevin draws, and plays a Thriving Bluff, naming white as it comes in. He then casts Rite of Oblivion, sacrificing a Clue token to exile Yawgmoth. With the ability on the stack, I sacrifice a plant in response to Shrink Drana, and draw a card and lose a life. We also lose 1 from the Clue token getting destroyed, and Yawgmoth is then exiled. Kevin then recasts Wernog, and Max and Mika take the clues, while I'm a good boy and take the damage, with Kevin making a total of 3 clues. With nothing else, he passes. I dredge a land with a Necrobloom, and then play a Forest off the top, gaining 1. I then cast a Mirkwood Bats, followed by Sheoldred. With her on the stack, Mika and Max sacrifice their Clue tokens to draw. I then followed up by casting Sakura Tribe Elder. I go to combat, swing Mazarek at Kevin, who chumps with Drana. With nothing else, I have to pass. Mika draws and takes 2 off of Sheoldred. He then goes to combat, swinging the Aurora Phoenix at the invasion of Kaldheim. I respond by sacrificing Sakura Tribe Elder, pumping my Mirkwood Bats, and go to find a basic and get a zombie token. I then cast Crop Rotation, sacrificing a land and pumping my team again, going to find Cabal Coffers this time around and making a zombie. I then move to blocks, putting the bats in front of the Phoenix, and Mika activates Faldorn in response, discarding a card and exiling his top card, but can't find anything to help the Phoenix. In his post-combat main phase, Mika then plays a Spine Rock Knoll, which comes in tapped, and he hides away a card. He then casts Professional Facebreaker, and then Defense of the Heart. With the defense still on the stack though, Max pays 1 blue for Swan Song to counter it, and with nothing else, Mika passes. Max draws and casts March from Belisfell, turning all of his gates into Avengers of Zendikar. He then plays an island and a blast zone, pumping his team significantly since so many things are plants and there are so many Avengers. Going to combat, Max swings his plant tokens Avenger, Omo, Satyr Wayfinder, and Manor Gate at me, and the rest of his animated lands at Kevin. Kevin responds by casting Despark and targets Basilisk Gate since it's a copy of Avenger's Zendikar, but then chumps the rest. I don't have nearly enough blockers and die, but do kill a Manor Gate with Shoulder It on the way out, and Kevin drops to 2 life. After that, Max casts Copy Land, and he targets the Basilisk Gate, putting more counters onto his massive team, and then passes turn. Kevin draws and cracks 3 clue tokens, and then casts Armix and Nadir's Nightblade. With nothing else, he passes to Mika. Mika casts Venture Forth, removing the final counter from the suspend, and he reveals until he hits a forest. He then draws for turn. He activates Faldorn, discarding a card, and exiling Kessig Wolfrun, which he plays. Going to combat, he swings out at Max, and Max blocks the Bonecrusher Giant and Battle Mammoth. With blocks declared, Mika activates the Kessig Wolfrun, pumping his wolf token that's unblocked, which gets him just enough damage to take Max out. After combat, Mika then casts Amizium Mortars on Nadir's Nightblade, taking it out, and then passes. Kevin draws for turn and casts a Nettle Cyst. He then equips it onto Armix. He then plays Karlach, and he goes to combat. He swings Armix at Mika, getting the trigger and killing a wolf token, and Mika blocks with another wolf. Kevin gets a second combat step thanks to Karlach, and repeats the process, swinging, getting an Armix trigger to take out a wolf, and Armix then gets blocked by another wolf token. With his double attacks unsuccessful, Kevin knows when he's beat and scoops it up to Mika's board.
Game review time. This game was 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 52 seconds, and I think for a first showing, this was a fantastic debut for Omo. I think Max's plays with all of the lands that he was having and the nesting grounds was really strong, and I really enjoy the commander. It actually made me realize that I think I have something like 4 land-based decks with Magus Lucia Kane, Titania, Necrobloom, and now Omo, so some of them are probably going to have to get cut. It's not going to be Magus Lucia Kane, I can tell you that much though. The deck performed admirably. I think the March in particular is a very strong card in this deck, and Max turning all of his gates, or I guess locuses, or whatever non-basic he picked, was particularly strong. Plus the fact that they all had the everything counter on them already, meaning that those Avengers were also plants, was just absolutely bonkers. It was so cool. I just love that kind of stuff. There's a couple of cards that I've ordered for the deck that I'm hoping to include in the future, so you're going to have to see what I tweak and how it performs moving forward. Mika's Faldorn deck, you know, he didn't change all that much to it. There's a couple new cards, but by and large, there's a lot of stuff that you can find in the precon. The deck functions really well right off the bat. I think it's a particularly powerful precon, and you know, if you can find a good priced one, it has Jeska's Will in it, which is like a $30 card, which is just a great pickup. Kevin's Sophina and Wernog deck is dangerous. It has a bit of a reputation. Kevin has a bit of a reputation for how well he plays the deck, and for this game, I was a little bit surprised. He wasn't as threatening as he usually is. He didn't have the Clock of Omens, which is probably one of the strongest pieces in his deck, and the fact that none of us were really taking his Wernog triggers until the very end probably didn't help. My Necrobloom deck, I don't know, it's fun, but it's not exactly what I'm looking to be doing in Abzan. It's a cool deck, I like it, if you enjoy it, that's cool, but this is probably one of the decks that I'm taking apart. Field of the Dead is very good, especially when it's in the command zone, but it's one of those decks that everyone sees and they have to keep it on their radar, and if I'd had that Scoot Swarm out for longer, things would have gotten really bad for everyone. The follow-up turn after the Scoot Swarm would have been that Harrow and then the Entis Restoration, which means I probably would have had like a dozen or so Scoot Swarms, so that would have just, you know, gotten out of hand very quickly. And if you couple that with some of the enablers like Shouldered or Yawgmoth, you could see that I was really building a strong engine. Mazurk in particular was a powerful follow-up to the Yawgmoth, especially when I had so many plant tokens. I was going to be killing so many creatures, and it was getting so big. It was awesome.